Could the shootings of black people be caused by something besides racist cops? Find out here today on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website. I almost forgot what it was called, IGTV. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, if you want to engage live in the content, go follow me. I'm over on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live. Got a ton of people coming in right now. Thank you guys for being here. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. My mouth is going faster than my brain will allow me to... So that's where we are, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page as well as on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay right here on Instagram. It is on IGTV, so go check it out. We also have the past episodes up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Finally, you guys. Oh, by the way, over on YouTube. Today, we have a very special bonus episode for you. My fellow health podcaster, Abel James, is my guest. And Abel and I had a great conversation on the Real Talk podcast. So it'll air on my Real Talk podcast a little bit later. But when you're done watching this here today, you can go watch that video interview. Abel has the voice from God. I mean, he's got this super deep, rich podcast voice. I have a podcast voice, but it's not like Abel James's podcast voice. So go listen to that interview. It was a really great conversation. We had a really good time talking about all kinds of things. So go check that out. Then finally go over to JimmyRants.com, the official website for this here show. And while you're there, you can see all the past episodes. And if you want to show your support for what I do have both a Patreon and a PayPal link. And a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. Okay, you guys, I'm about to dip my toe into a bit of controversy today. And those of you that know me well know I don't shy away from controversy when it warrants discussion and warrants being thought about. And this topic here today is probably going to upset some people. And I want to give a few caveats up front. So we have this narrative out there in our culture right now that white cops are hunting down black people for the pure sport of just killing them for no good reason. That's kind of the notion that's been put out there, that white cops are racist towards black people, and therefore that's why they hunt them down and they shoot them for no good reason. And every single victim of that, the black person is an innocent, unarmed, above the fray, everything. Okay, so that's kind of the notion that's been put out there, and people, I guess, reinforce that every time there's a new shooting that takes place. Someone says, see, there's evidence of it again. Racist white cop goes after innocent black person that's unarmed. Okay, so I got very curious to see if there was any other explanation as to why these shootings were taking place. And obviously, on an individual level, they all are horrific, and then you cumulatively add up all the individual levels. It's horrific when you see what's happened. Nobody is saying that any of these people deserve to be shot. Let's don't go there, and don't mishear me thinking that that's what I'm saying here. And we're also not saying that there isn't racism out there. I think we're all smart enough. I live in the deep South, so I understand there are racist tendencies in some people, definitely where I live in this part of the country. So I'm not denying that doesn't exist. It does. But I started doing some investigation, you guys, looking at all of these different shootings. I basically started doing a Google search looking for when a black man has been shot by police, because I wanted to see, is there any other clue in these stories? Now, obviously, what I'm about to share with you is not universally true for all of them, but this came up again and again and again to the point that I said, whoa, we need to be addressing that part of this discussion. And literally nobody is talking about what I'm about to share with you here now. And if you're just joining us, yes, we're talking about black people being shot by white cops. And the narrative that's out there is it's solely because they are racist. And what I'm about to share with you here now is evidence to the contrary that it may not be racism that is leading to these shootings. What if it's something else? And what if that something else is that most of these criminals, because most of them are criminals, they have committed some kind of a crime, therefore the cops show up to deal with the crime. Most of these criminals have a heavy addiction to PCP. And I've got a series of stories here of all these different people that had interactions with the cops. And I couldn't believe when I started connecting the dots how many of them have a connection to taking PCP, which caused some of the erratic behavior, which caused them to fight the cops, which caused them to put themselves in a vulnerable position so that then when the cops are trying to subdue the suspect or make an arrest, they're acting erratically because they're out of their mind from the PCP. And at the end of talking about those different stories, I've got a whole article all about PCP and what happens when you take it and what are the ramifications and all that. But if you're just joining us, yes, I think there are racist cops. So let's get that out of the way. And I think some of these shootings are definitely suspect about how they could have handled those situations. So let's get that out of the way. And I'm definitely not victim blaming here. On the contrary, I'm actually trying to see if we could back up a little bit from the hotness of the topic itself, black people being shot by white cops. If we could back away from that just one step and instead put on our thinking caps and say, what led to that moment? What led to that flashpoint where this controversy takes place? And what happened in the midst of that? So, PCP plays a big role. So this is from January this year. A black man handcuffed with his hands behind his back in a police car was shot multiple times by a police officer right outside of Washington, D.C. The suspect was under the influence of PCP, according to the Washington Post. And there it is. He was on PCP. Phenylcyclidine. That's why they say PCP. It's easier to say. It's used recreationally to induce a dissociative state that can cause hallucinations. News media describe it as an evil drug that turns users into cannibals, or a drug that motivates someone to murder. This is in that news story. And so they kind of go through a little bit more. But this was in Washington, D.C. in January. Here's another one. Tulsa, Oklahoma. An unarmed man was fatally shot last month by a police officer, had a high level of PCP in his body. A coroner reported, confirming what the police surmised at the time. The officer was charged with manslaughter. That's kind of typical. But the one that was shot, Mr. Crutcher, was 40, walking away, and then started acting erratically. Had stopped a vehicle in the middle of the road, got out. He was talking nonsensically and not responding to the commands of the officer. Sound familiar? After the shooting, the police said they found a vial of PCP. And there's another one, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Then here's another one. And this just came out yesterday, 2 months before George Floyd incident. This happened. Another black man, this was in Rochester, New York, died of asphyxiation, they say, because police tried to restrain him. They pinned him to the ground because he was acting erratically. And it was a 41-year-old man. And let's get to where they were talking about his death, because they said it appeared it was asphyxiation that killed him. And so the police saw him breaking windows at a business as he walked along. Officers found him doing this. Several people encountered him. At least one of them called 911 to report he was acting erratically. He had left his brother's home only wearing underwear, a tank top, and socks. He took off the clothes, a witness told police. One passerby stopped to shoot a Facebook Live video of the incident and called 911. Then the victim actually yelled at a motorist, "Please call 911, I need to go to the doctor." And so police came just a few minutes later. He was ordered to lie on the ground and place his hands behind his back. He complied, and that was at 3:15 a.m. And then he started fighting with them. Okay, so they concluded here as well that he too had been found to have PCP in his system. Toxicology tests of the autopsy found levels of PCP. They call it angel dust. The drug can induce schizophrenia and wildly erratic, violent behavior. So there's another one where they had PCP. How about this one? Lufkin, Texas. Lufkin police officers arrested a man believed to be intoxicated on PCP who had been found sitting in a woman's car, and he kept repeating, "Don't do drugs, kids. This will happen." That's kind of ironic. And it was just in the middle of the afternoon. 38-year-old man charged with Class C public intoxication. And it looks like the woman told police she heard the car door shut. When she walked outside, she found a man sitting in her car. She yelled at him to get out, and he did. The woman also told police that the man lingered around her yard, told her he was lost before he walked away. When the officer arrived on the scene, the victim described the suspect as a black male wearing dark-colored shirt and camouflage shorts. The officer found the suspect, later identified walking down the road nearby. And the first thing he asked the police officer when they started questioning him was, "Did I kill somebody?" He was that much out of his mind. So if they found that he had PCP in his system. And he was high as expletive, as the officer says. He attempted to walk away, but the officer detained him for his own safety. Because if he was out of his mind, Lord knows what he would have done next. So there's another one. Now, that one didn't involve a shooting, but it was another suspect that had PCP, very high levels of PCP, that caused him to act criminally. Kansas City, Missouri. Authorities say a Kansas City police officer shot and killed a man who had been smoking PCP after he pointed a weapon at them and refused to put it down. The man ran from a home with a gun around 11 p.m. A woman told officers the man had been smoking PCP for several days and that she feared he was going to come back and kill her. Officers tried to use non-lethal beanbag rounds in an unsuccessful attempt to bring him down. During a standoff, he tried to get into a home. Police said that raised concerns about the safety of the people in the area. When he pointed his gun at the officers at 1:40 a.m., they fired back and killed him. PCP. Are you seeing a bit of the tie here? I got two more, guys. This one is from Stamford. Is it Pennsylvania? It just says Stamford. I think that's Pennsylvania. A 37-year-old man allegedly on PCP assaulted 4 police officers, injuring 3 of them. He was involved in a physical altercation with 1 or more people inside the mini mart. When police arrived to the scene, he was spotted on the street fighting a man. The other man told police he was on some form of narcotic. He told police officers that he got punched in the face. When an officer approached him, the resident walked towards him aggressively. The officer took out his taser, told Green to step back, according to the police report, and the suspect said, "I'm going to F you up." He was tasered by the officer, taken to the ground, was then put in the police cruiser. As officers tried to get him in the car, he grabbed the genitals of the officers and squeezed as hard as he could. They then called for a car with a full-size cage in the back seat since they thought he was too combative to go in a regular cruiser, and they found that he had high levels of PCP in his system. And then the last one is the most famous one. This is what started all the race stuff in America. George Floyd. When they released the body cam of the George Floyd incident, they found when he first got into the confrontation with the cops when they showed up, if you look on the tape, he's got his tongue sticking out and there is a white pill on his tongue. And they said that he had PCP in his system and he had just popped another one. So guys, I'm not saying this again to blame these victims of these shootings and some of these ones that died. So please don't hear me say that. I want to talk about, though, why is there such a major issue with PCP amongst this population? Now, it could be argued that they're downtrodden, that there's difficulty in their life because of some of the challenges that some of the social justice stuff is bringing out, and that drives them to take drugs. I don't know. And I'm not even so sure that we should even make this a racial thing. It's only racial because the narrative is white cops are racist towards these black people. But look at their actions. All of their actions are when they're out of their mind. If all of these people who were in these incidents, from George Floyd and all the ones I just described, and by the way, that's just touching the surface. I could have literally printed out hundreds of those kinds of stories. When I started researching this, I was shocked how many of them had this common denominator that the suspect was on PCP. So I think we need to have a deep, hard discussion about why PCP is such a problem. And why, when someone is under the influence of PCP and they're acting erratically and they're fighting police, because like think about the incident in Wisconsin, that Jacob Blake guy. It's inconclusive. Nobody's done a toxicology on that because he didn't die. He's still alive. But it's been theorized that because he was tased twice but was able to get away, that he must have had this, because PCP, and I'm going to read a story here in a minute about what PCP does, but it kind of gives you that superhuman strength and ability to withstand pain. You're in another world. And it makes you wonder, if they were in their right mind and not under the influence of the PCP, would these incidents, any of these incidents I just described, would they have ever happened? And yet the narrative is racist white cop kills black person out of a good, upstanding member of society and is an angel and perfect and nothing's wrong in their life and they're unarmed and they're innocent. If you have to take drugs like PCP, you got stuff going on in your life. And I think we need to be looking at that aspect of this issue. Get these people some help at that point where they feel like they have to take a drug to numb their pain. Like, are you feeling me here? Like the humanness within me is crying out. Let's give a crap about these people. Let's help them at that point so they don't get to the point where they have a confrontation with police. You see what I'm saying? This kind of like bursts the whole narrative that it's racist white cops killing innocent black people. It might be some of that in some cases, but as I just kind of outlined, it's a lot deeper than that. And what drives people to go to this drug? And if it's not PCP, it could be other ones, but PCP, ecstasy. I mean, I'm not a drug expert by any means, but there's different hallucinogens that could be used to put you in another universe, because when your life is that painful, You just want the pain to go away. But the problem is some of the ramifications of these drugs like PCP, and what I'm going to talk about here in what happens when you take PCP, the ramifications is it causes you to act erratically. It causes you to act criminally. It causes you to get out of your mind and therefore behave poorly and therefore put yourself at risk. Because these poor police officers, and let's talk about the police officers for a second. Imagine you're a police officer and you see this guy high as a kite on PCP. And you're doing your best to subdue him, and he's fighting you. He's punching you. He's putting you in a headlock. He's doing everything he can to get away from you. And if he could, he would murder you. That's how bad these drugs are messing with these suspects' heads. And so the white cop, but even black cops, have trouble dealing with the criminals when they're under the influence. And see, when you see these viral videos, you have to think, okay, that person either is out of their mind mentally or they're out of their mind because they're under the influence. A rational person would not just act erratically, especially when guns are drawn on them. They wouldn't act crazy and act erratically. And yet that's what we're being led to believe. Oh, they have the right to do it. They have the right to not resist, and they don't deserve to be killed. And I'm like, okay, I get all that. But if those police officers are fearful, they're going to shoot. I was watching a video this morning of a white female cop who was reporting to a home where there was some noise or whatever. And the lady that she was trying to apprehend, a young white girl, came out with a kitchen knife, like a big butcher knife, and just started slashing at the police officer, lunged at her. And of course she got cut and she called for backup. The backup came and the other guy had his gun drawn. And of course the female cop, bleeding, was still putting a gun on her and said, hey, drop the knife. She dropped the knife. And then she picks it back up, and then the other cop comes around, and she lunges towards him, and he had to shoot her. Now, we don't want to see human life die. We don't want to see people that are obviously disturbed either through drugs like PCP, or in this girl's case, the family said she had severe mental illness going on. We need to get these people some help. Like, before it reaches the point of police interaction where certain tragedy is bound to happen, can we help women like that get the mental health help that they need? Can we help members of the black community that feel like they need to be high on PCP? Every inkling in my body just has a heart for the humanity of this situation. And of course, it's a very convenient narrative to just say, well, black people are being hunted down by racist white cops. It's systemic racism. It's all through. We need to defund the police, because it's easy to have all those talking points. But when you step back and you see this commonality, and again, this is not all of these incidences, but it's enough of them. I read about 10 stories to you where the common factor in these black people confronting white cops and sometimes getting shot and killed was PCP. Can we help those people? How do we reach those people? Can we get into the communities and find out? That's where I think we could resolve a lot of these issues while training cops to use less lethal force and while doing all the things. But this is a big, big problem that we need to address sooner than later. All right, so let's get into this article that I found about what happens when someone takes PCP. So a lot of these shootings are taking place where the suspect is under the influence of PCP. So let's see what it does to them. When a person ingests PCP, they expect to feel a pleasant high and go into a hallucinated state. Initially, the individual may feel happy, and the perception changes may not be extreme hallucinations, but instead changes to light, color, sound, and touch. I've heard ecstasy has somewhat the same kind of effect. I've never taken drugs in my life, so I don't even know what that is even about, but I can conceptualize it. The individual may experience changes in time, either slowing down or speeding up, or they can feel like they're outside or above their bodies. Any effects of PCP tend to begin within 30 to 60 minutes after it's ingested. So, like George Floyd had a PCP tablet on his tongue, that would have taken 30 to 60 minutes. When he stuck it on his tongue, he probably had already had some in his system based on the way he was acting on the body cam video. Or it could get into the system a few minutes if you smoke it or inject it directly into you. Depending on the size and potency of the dose, these effects can last 4 to 6 hours and sometimes as long as 24 hours. Because PCP causes hallucinations for many people, this actually turns out to be a dangerous thing. Anxiety, going delirious, paranoia, and inability to distinguish reality from fantasy. All of these are hallmark symptoms of someone intoxicated by PCP. The individual could become aggressive because of the paranoia or panic attacks, and they lash out at themselves and the people around them. Sound familiar? They could believe things that are not true, called delusions. These could be delusions of grandeur, including the ability to fly, paranoid delusions, including the sensation that everybody around them is trying to kill them. They could experience amnesia and even memory loss. Traveling for healthcare and essential services is permitted across the U.S. Addiction treatment is essential, and you can get help. So, maybe you know somebody in your life that has some of these outward signs of PCP intoxication. Maybe you've seen this before, or maybe when you're seeing some of these interactions with police, maybe you start to see some of this behavior. If a person is intoxicated after having PCP, they may have some symptoms like a blank stare. I remember when I watched the body cam video of the George Floyd when they first started arresting him. The first thing you saw was just this. That's what you saw. It's this blank stare. Rapid involuntary eye movements, typically side to side. Changes to stride or gait. Drooling. A loss of balance, which that was the other thing with George Floyd. He kept kind of falling over. They put him in the back of the seat of the cruiser, and he was feeling like he was being collapsed in on, and so he kept like falling over, and that was why they brought him out of the vehicle and he got on the ground, because he needed to feel stable. Catatonic trance, twitches, shudders, random uncontrolled movements, physical exertion without the perception of pain or muscle strain. That's where these people that get away from the taser, that physical exertion without the perception of pain or muscle strain. They're not feeling the pain of it. Sweating, flushing due to an increase in body temperature. So that's the outward signs of PCP intoxication. What are the side effects? These are what happen physiologically to someone on PCP that can be alarming or physically dangerous. Raised blood pressure, rapid or irregular heartbeat, the body temp goes up, increased respiration, gasping for air. So you remember on the body cam video, if you watched some of the body cam video, not just the video that everybody saw on TV, but the body cam video that came out about a month or so ago, he was saying he was having trouble breathing long before he was on the ground and that asshole cop had his knee on him. He was saying, I can't breathe long before then, because that's what the PCP does. Makes it hard to gasp for air. Nausea, vomiting, blurred vision, dizziness, confusion, seizures, and even coma. So the drug PCP was developed in the 1950s. It was supposed to be an intravenous anesthetic drug, but the side effects that patients experienced after using the substance led to the discontinuation of it for medical purposes. However, it has been introduced as an illicit hallucinogen. People take it because they want to get out of their minds. They don't want to have to deal with their real life, and so they take this drug to hallucinate. It's sometimes called angel dust, embalming fluid, or rocket fuel. As a non-medical dangerous drug, PCP is found in powdered form. You can smoke it, you can mix it with water and drink it, you can inject it, you can eat it, and it can also sometimes be found as a pill or gel capsule. As a hallucinogen, PCP affects people very differently. In the best possible circumstances, the person who takes it gets a sense of euphoria, some perceptual changes. Unfortunately, this drug is very dangerous and can actually lead to major mental and physical side effects. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration in 2010, there were 55,000 emergency room visits associated with PCP abuse. It's primarily ingested by teenagers and young adults, which leads to long-term health problems in addition to short-term side effects. So, what are some of the withdrawal symptoms? So, if you take it, it's extremely addictive. People who abuse this drug, they experience memory loss, amnesia, depression, anxiety, drug cravings, fatigue, need to sleep more, and an increase in their appetite. Long-term effects of abusing PCP, you get serious physical and mental side effects. You can suffer from psychosis during one episode of intoxication that could actually turn into a permanent psychosis. So you take this drug to get high, but then the psychosis stays and it never leaves. This and other serious mental health problems can be triggered during an episode called a run, in which a person takes PCP over several days. One of those suspects that I read from, they said, a family member said, oh yeah, I've been taking PCP for days. This person is very susceptible to this. They don't eat or sleep. The individual experiences flashbacks to the hallucinations. When they're not high anymore, they start having the flashbacks. They could develop a speech pathology, including stuttering, an ability to find words or articulate thoughts, persistent disordered thoughts, and in some rare cases, the person may lose their ability to speak altogether. Serious anxiety and depression are common amongst those people with chronic abuse of PCP. These mental health issues could be accompanied by social isolation and suicidal ideation. Organ damage to the liver, kidneys, and lungs also can occur. So you can get help. They do have an 888 number if you know anybody that deals with this. 888-279-4668. And they give you links to facilities and treatment programs. But if you came in late to this, there is a new kind of connection between all of these shootings that are happening to black people by white cops. And I know the media likes to gin up this racist white cop against innocent black person kind of narrative. I'm giving another perspective today. Is this valid? Is this something that you think has merit in any way? I don't know. I'm putting it out there for informational purposes, because when I started looking at this and I started digging a little bit deeper, and when I saw this connection to PCP, I had no idea it was such a commonly taken drug by these people who end up fighting the police and causing domestic disturbance. And again, I'm sure it's just as bad with white people that take this drug as well. It's just you never hear about it because there is no racism against white people by black cops. You're not hearing that. So it probably is there in the white community as well. Anybody trying to escape, and think about what's happened in 2020. All the stress of everything with COVID-19 and people losing their jobs, on and on and on, that probably has not helped this very much as well. So where are they getting the PCP? How are they affording the PCP? It's a lot of things that we can be doing societally to try to deal with that thing, so that when it comes to a confrontation with a cop, if you're in your right mind and you're not high as a kite on PCP, you're going to have a better opportunity to have good judgment calls. Because I think most of us can agree, these encounters that I described to you here today were violent. They were attacking the police. They were out of their minds. Remember, one of the side effects is it makes you hallucinate and get paranoid and think that everybody's out to get you and out to kill you. You're going to do all you can to survive. Your brain is being fooled into thinking you're in danger when you're not in danger at all. So when you see criminal behavior like that, where they're fighting the cops, ask yourself the question, I wonder if they're on PCP or some other kind of drug. Something to think about here today, and something I like to do here on Jimmy Rants. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. I'm going to come over here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. Reevy has the first question. I'm from South Africa. Blacks kill whites daily in this place. Well, it's a little more skewed in that way, right? Like there's more black people than there are white people. I've been to South Africa one time, so I don't know what the demographics are, but I'm thinking that white people are the minority there. Thought I saw it. Yeah, Joshua said, I just read that you can have flashbacks days or even weeks after taking PCP. Yeah, I was just saying that. And that's right, Joshua. You can. And that's part of the issue, is you start having problems long after you're off of it. And so then that can contribute if you ever get into these situations with a police officer. You can even feel the effects of the drug even though you haven't taken any and you don't have the flashbacks. Yeah. I would think some of the physiological, the mental ones are obvious, but some of even the physiological ones, like when your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate increases and you're breathing faster and a little more shallow, all of those things will have a physical effect on your body. You're having trouble sleeping and like all of that's going to be tough for your body to handle. And so, yeah, I can't imagine like weeks after you've done it, you're still dealing with some of those ramifications. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here now to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? See what you have to say. Tara says, as someone who has experience with psychedelic plant medicine, I can say that it's man-made drugs like PCP that are super dangerous. Psychedelics should only be used if you want to get it into your mind and explore trauma so you can dissolve it. There are medical and mental contraindications even for the natural medicines. They can absolutely cause psychosis in some people. We need more education. I completely empathize with all sides in the story. Me too, Tara, because I think what's lost in the narrative of racist white cops against innocent black people is it's not the full story. And I don't mind that narrative being there if there is an element of truth to it, and I agree, there probably is, to a degree, some element of truth in that. But let's not make that the only issue. It's like everything else in life. Life is not just, it's this and therefore this. It's racist white cops and therefore they kill black people. That's what we're being led to believe. And now we're seeing nuances of it. This PCP monkey wrench kind of throws a new wrinkle into it, which makes me have a heart for wanting to help those black people that are taking the PCP before they encounter the cop and before they act erratically, and let's just say it, before they put themselves in a position to be shot and killed, because that's what's happening right now. Shouldn't the police be trained in this kind of behavior? Normally, I would think they are. My dad was a police officer, and I remember he used to give some drug talks when I was a kid. He would go to schools and he'd have this big board of all these drugs that he would apprehend or get after he apprehended a suspect. I don't remember PCP being a big one. Marijuana was the big one he always busted with, but it was all kinds of barbiturates. It was all kinds of things, methamphetamines, all of that. But yeah, I mean, you would think, okay, when you see a suspect having this kind of behavior, the problem is, how do you distinguish between behavior induced by PCP and someone that maybe has mental illness, and then just someone who's just temporarily out of their mind in the moment? So it's like, I don't know how you train a cop to distinguish between those. I know one of the stories noted that they could smell the PCP, so I guess if you take it in certain ways, it's got an odor that you can smell. But you're right, Norma, I do think they could probably do a better job of trying to recognize the behavior, and maybe have, in those situations, have specialists that can deal with that kind of a situation. Kind of like you have when there's like a hostage situation, and you got a hostage specialist, and they're the ones talking to the people holding them hostage. Can you have one person in each of these like police units that could be that guy that they say, okay, you've been trained in how to deal with someone who's on PCP, talk them down, do all the things you got to do, and then all the other police officers are there to back them up, but let that guy do his job. That would be an interesting thing to see if it would work. I don't know. I've had firsthand experience during my college days. I still have flashbacks at times, very rare. That's interesting, all these years later, Norma, that you still have flashbacks even now. Tara says, I could train them. They need to connect with the psychedelic community. We have trained interrogation specialists and therapists. That I figured that was already there, Tara. Thank you for confirming what I'm surmising here. But man, like that could be a good way to end this whole nonsense of it's just racist white cops going after black people. If it's more to it than that, and what I'm talking about here today with the PCP, it is more to it than that. And so, yeah, I think it's a viable solution if these police officers really want to try to get into solving this problem. All right, thank you, Facebook. Let me pop over here now to my YouTube channel, see what you guys have to say. Interesting subject. Thanks for sharing, says Marianne. You're welcome. Try to do that all the time. Dot Connector says, also part of the problem is police being trained to be in imminent threat at all times. Also, police being deliberately recruited with a very low IQ. Well, I don't know about any of the veracity of that, but thank you for sharing your opinion. Brian says, what if the problem is black people resisting arrest and posing a threat to the officers? Well, again, if we're talking about under the influence of PCP, which most of those things that I just read, all of those stories I just read, that was the thing. And they resisted because they were out of their minds. Remember, they're hallucinating. They're getting paranoid. They think everybody's out to get them and out to kill them. I hear what you're saying, but I'm thinking we have to bring in this under the influence of drugs thing, or you're not getting the full context of what's happening. Shirley says, somehow I had never heard of this drug before. I live in a sheltered life. You never heard of PCP before? Yeah, it's been out there forever. Yeah, it's not new. All right, guys, so hopefully this was something you could think about. Again, most people wouldn't touch this topic with a 10-foot pole because, no, you're supposed to believe the narrative that all black people are innocent, that are shot by racist white cops, and that's the only explanation. And hopefully I've kind of given you food for thought that this is something else that could be going on. I'm not, again, not saying it's the case in all cases. I know what's going to happen when I'm done with this here today. Somebody said, well, what about this case? There was no PCP. I'm not saying it's every case, but it's enough to go, okay, this is an element of the conversation that we need to be talking about. And I hope this kind of spurred your brain to think about this a little bit more. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me right here. I'm on Instagram. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for being here today. We also simulcast live over on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay right here on Instagram. IGTV is where we house those. We also put them over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Don't forget the Jimmy Rants bonus episode over there today. I've got my buddy Abel James, fellow health podcaster, many years we've been friends, and we talked about all kinds of things related to what's happening in our world today, so much more. Good times when you have fellow podcasters interviewing each other. So go check that out or listen to it on the Real Talk podcast today, llvlc.com. And then finally, pop on over to the official website, jimmyrants.com. You can see all the past episodes there. And while you're there, support the work I do here. If you like these kinds of topics that I bring up, definitely support my work. Click on the Patreon link or the PayPal link, and a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. All right, guys, that's it for now. We'll see you again for Ask Me Anything tomorrow. So be there, be square. See you then.